There's another element of TK interface programming that you need to be aware of, and that is called the event loop. And the event loop is it's like a while true loop that goes forever. Okay, and every TK interface program, including this one here, has that event loop, and it's called root.main loop. So it is a method of the window object, and it says basically keep going as long as the window is open. Why do we need a loop? What's it doing? What's the loop doing? Because I don't see anything indented under that loop. So what is that loop doing? It's listening. Because what happens in a TK interface program is different than the programs that we're used to writing. In the programs that we're used to writing, the computer has control, or the program has control over what code gets executed and when. Right? We start out with a basic program that's just procedural, and it's just first line, second line, third line, fourth line, and just goes through the program. Later on, we learned about branching, we learned about loops, and those allowed the program to execute different kinds of code. But the program still was in the driver's seat as far as where that flow happened and what code got executed and that sort of thing. And even when we added things like classes and objects and functions, the computer is still driving in the driver's seat, right? That's how it works. That's how a procedural program works. That's what we've been writing all semester. When we shift to TK interface, and by the way, this will also be true in our next module, which is game development. In those scenarios, the computer is not the one deciding which code gets executed. Think about this. When you're using Microsoft Word, if I open up Microsoft Word and I'm typing something in Microsoft Word, I can type something, I can insert a table, I can insert an image. The program doesn't know what I want to do next. It's not asking me, pick an option from this menu, and then I'll do that thing. It's just sitting there waiting for me to do something. And when I click a button or when I do something, then the program responds by executing code that is associated with that event. That's how graphical user interface programming works. What it does is that event loop runs, and it's like a car idling. It's waiting for you to do something. The potential is there, but it's waiting. When I click a button, when I change a value in a text box, when I choose something from a menu, those are all events that happen. And if I have something in my code called an event listener for that event, in other words, if there's a button on my screen, like let's say this button here with the calculator, okay? So if I've got this calculator program and I type something in this box and I click this button has an event listener on it that says, when the button is clicked, do this. Now, most of the time, the this that it does is a function that I've programmed. So it's going to execute a function when I click on that. And that function basically says, get the number from here, run it through a little formula that changes it to meters, and then put the answer on this label. That's what the event listener does. And every time I invoke that event listener, it's going to do that thing. And every time I change the value and click that button, that event listener is going to fire off because that loop is continually going. Okay, so I've got that event loop just going and going and going, like a car idling, listening for that event. Okay, and so the program that we have, and this is why it's so important to understand how to build programs that exist in functions, because now I can take those functions and all I have to do is attach those to an event listener, and then they can work just as well. So that's how we're going to do this with TK interface. It's called event-driven programming rather than procedural programming.